Welcome to this review of the long-awaited Asus 4K 144Hz HDR G-Sync monitor, the PG27UQ. I've had the monitor for a few days now, and I've been playing around with it, and I just wanted to walk you guys through my thoughts on the monitor so far. So let's jump right into it. So opening up Nvidia control panel, you can see that the main attraction of this monitor is G-Sync. So when you have it, make sure it's enabled. And I am actually running two TITAN Xps on this with the HB SLI bridge, and I'll get into the reasons as to why I'm not running 4 cards. So I'm running SLI here, and you can see that it's connected via DisplayPort 1.4 cable. I've enabled DSR, so some of the other resolutions are available. We'll get to that, but the main thing is the monitor technology is G-Sync, and there's this new thing with vertical sync. I leave it on the default setting, but you can enable fast sync, which is better than V-Sync or G-Sync, I believe, in certain scenarios. I haven't really tested that out, but anyway, that's just an option. So if you go to the resolution screen, obviously it's native 4K, and I have the desktop resolution set to 120 Hertz. The monitor actually is natively only 120 Hertz. You have to enable overclocking in the OSD of the monitor to get this 144 Hertz option, and I don't necessarily leave it there. I can change it to that setting in the games if I want to, but I leave the desktop at its native 4K 120 Hertz refresh rate. Now you'll notice that it's interesting that they have this 98 Hertz, and that's because in order to get the full, I believe the 10-bit color, you need to enable 98 Hertz in order to have the HDR with the 10-bit color. Otherwise, at 120 and 144 Hertz, this monitor uses Chroma Subsampling. Now, I'm not an expert on monitor technology or a lot of the technical details, so you guys would want to read some more in-depth reviews on that, but basically what I take that to mean is if you enable 120 or 144 Hertz on this monitor, it reduces the quality of the output of the image, basically the quality of the image in terms of the colors. Whereas if you want to have the full gamut, I guess it's the 10-bit color at 98 Hertz is where HDR really shines. But having said that, I leave it at 120, and you can adjust it back and forth. So I don't know why it's telling me to apply that, but that's where it's been. And what's interesting is, as I showed you, the G-Sync, you can enable it for windowed mode as well. And I don't have multiple display right now. I'm just connected this monitor for this review. So now before we jump into any gaming, I wanted to show you guys a quick setting in Windows 10. You need to have a certain build of Windows 10 in order for this option to be available. I forget the exact number, but make sure your Windows 10 is updated, and this will show up in the display settings. And once you have HDR, you can just turn it on in the desktop. And this is in fact why, if you look down here in the Nvidia control panel, you'll see that it's actually running 10-bit color with the color format of this YCBCR422, which is not the full gamut, if I remember correctly, because as I said, at 120 Hertz it uses 422 instead of 444. So again, just take that for what it means. I don't know all the details about why 444 is better than 422, but this is what it is, and I have HDR enabled in desktop. Now, having said that, also usually I do not have HDR enabled on desktop, because the coolest thing about this monitor is when you play games that have HDR capability, the monitor automatically switches to a HDR format, and you can play with that. So for like Battlefield 1 or Star Wars Battlefront 2, Far Cry 5, etc., you can leave the desktop in SDR, which is the standard dynamic range, and have it at 144 hertz or 120 hertz at 8-bit color, and you don't necessarily need to run HDR in order to get the full benefit. Now the cool thing is, I want you guys to look at the HDR image. I don't know if it comes through in the video, but this looks very similar to my 4K OLED image, and obviously the OLED image, in my personal opinion, is still much better than this monitor. This is an IPS panel, but with the HDR enabled, it looks really, really good. Very close to the quality of the image of the 4K OLED, which is the Dell UP3017Q. But it's not quite at that level, but it still looks really good. And of course, this is a 27-inch monitor as well, and the bezels are kind of thick, so it's not, many of the things about this monitor are some of the cons that I'll get into later. But anyway, having said that, now let's jump into the gaming. So we're here in Assassin's Creed Origins, and I have HDR enabled. As you can see, the lighting is just incredible, and the cool thing about this monitor is it's capable of 1000 nits, which is extremely bright. But let me show you guys the settings real quick. And so as you can see, playing at 4K native, I've set it to 98 hertz to get the full HDR color range, and then HDR is turned on. And with the settings, so the maximum intensity of the monitor in nits, so if I put it at 1000, like you guys will see it here, it's insanely bright. So I don't think it should be that bright. In fact, 300's too bright. Maybe 300's fine. Let's try that. But it's, I have to really get used to the color scheme here. It just looks so different, in my opinion. But what concerns me a lot is if you guys look at the performance here, with HDR turned on, I don't know why all the settings, the other settings are the same. I should have showed you guys that first. So in graphics, everything is ultra, even the AA. So everything's maxed out, basically. That's the only way I play. I mean, you guys know me. So with one Titan Xp, I haven't overclocked it or anything, but still, like, look at this, it's like 42 FPS, which is, G-Sync's enabled, so there's no tearing, but this is beyond pathetic in my opinion, because it can't, one GPU couldn't hit 60 FPS in 4K. I think the Titan V came the closest. It had like 55 to 60 FPS, with one GPU in this game, and that was without HDR. So this makes sense. I mean, the Titan Xp should, I thought would hit about 50, but it's not even doing that. It's, with G-Sync, look at that, it's like locked to 42. Well, there it goes, 47, but it's a, okay, there we go. I haven't played this game in a long time, so I forgot, but, whoops. Anyway, it just seems like, it looks amazing, don't get me wrong, but
clear off now!
I don't want to get into a fight there, but the performance is just really low with one Titan XP. And I'll get into, again, this game doesn't have SLI, so it's just a shit experience. Because it, you can't get 60 FPS consistently unless you turn down settings, and I just refuse to do that. Like this, one of the biggest gripes that I have is anybody who buys this monitor or any high-end part or parts for their PC and then turns their settings down is just beyond retarded, in my opinion. That's analogous to getting a supercar and driving it at 30 miles an hour or 60 miles an hour. it's not meant for that. Either you buy a normal car and you go the speed limit, or you buy a supercar and you go as fast as you can, of course within reason of, you know, but it just seems like you know, one GPU is not enough to bring out the best of this monitor. I mean, imagine this game at 144 FPS. You know, if SLI were enabled, I should easily be able to hit that in 4K, but unfortunately it's not. It is what it is, and that's one of the annoying things. So you know, I guess we'll keep oh, I see, I got a clue up there. So one of the reasons I am playing with just 2 GPUs is I had 4 installed, and SLI in this with this monitor is just completely broken. The scaling is pathetic. You know, there's so much stuttering, and it's just highly problematic. It's just not a good experience at all. Even two-way has a lot of problems. So for a game like, for instance, Star Wars Battlefront 2, it's just it's just you know, it crashes at like the menu screen. Like if I try to change the graphics options, it crashes. If I disable SLI, everything works fine. So maybe it's just something to do with the game and not the monitor. But I think in conjunction with this monitor, there's just huge problems with SLI. So let's now look at a game where SLI is supposed to work properly, and I'll show you what I mean. So this is the mainstay game of the moment, Battlefield 1 with HDR enabled, maxed out in 4K. So let me show you guys the options. So playing in 4K, 144 Hz. As you can see, HDR 10's turned on. Everything's maxed out, including TAA and HBAO, and then HDR brightness is set to, I guess, 1150 nits. But the point is, you know, I have 2 Titan Xps connected with a HB SLI bridge, and as you can see, the second column, the percentages, is the GPU usage, and for some odd reason, even here, the GPU usage is not being maxed out. So I've been meaning to do a video on this issue separately, where I just feel SLI is just dying a slow and painful death. I mean, you know, I've been running 4-way SLI for years on end, and you know, been able to like get around a lot of these potential issues, but they're really like killing it where it's just not working. I mean, with an SSD monitor like this with DP 1.4, I would have expected near perfect usage with 4 GPUs, and here we are with not even, you know, good usage. Not even good usage with 2 GPUs. It's highly disappointing. Except, of course, you know, if you look at it from a gameplay perspective, it is very smooth because, you know, it has G-Sync, it has HDR, the colors are absolutely beautiful. The thing is, my experience of it is a bit muted because I've been playing with the 4K OLED monitor for so long, and I had the 8K IPS monitor last year. Of course, both of those are 60 Hertz, but look, if I'm getting 85 Hertz with this, like, it's not that much better than a 60 Hertz monitor. Of course, the difference being that this has G-Sync and HDR, which make a big difference, but not with the OLED. So, of course, the OLED image is better, doesn't have G-Sync. However, I just feel like this monitor is not that much better, in my personal opinion, in my experience so far. I mean, you know, the GPU usage is kind of shitty. Image quality is better on the OLED. The only advantage this thing has is G-Sync, but the OLED monitor is 30 inches. It looks way better both externally and image-wise. You know, the bezels on this monitor are really thick. It has a lot of gimmicky nonsense, like LED light on its hideous stand. Dude, are you... you know, and then it has like a multicolored LED on the back of the monitor, along with another LED on the stand that actually shines on the wall. And I've turned all of those off because I think that's just really ridiculous and kind of defeats the purpose of this, because, you know, you're talking about, dude, are you kidding me? 97? You know, the purpose of this monitor is purely, it's function over form, and instead Asus has, you know, spent a lot of time, evidently, to put all these gimmicky features on there, like the LED shining on the desktop, meaning on the desk, and then the, you know, the lights in the back and whatnot. Those are totally unnecessary in my opinion. You should really let the monitor and its performance do its speaking instead of having some marketing nonsense on there. But anyway, I mean, even if we were to ignore that, you know, I'm not seeing 99% usage across the GPU, even with HP SLI bridge, which is shocking to me. Whereas in certain games, as I've shown you guys before, with the 4K OLED monitor or any of my previous monitors, even the 8K monitor, I've had near perfect usage in many games. Of course, the most recent games like Assassin's Creed Origins, Wolfenstein Colossus, and a few others have just basically destroyed SLI. Like, they don't even, you know, they don't even let two-way work properly. So it's not a question of, you know, scaling. It's just SLI doesn't work, period. Wow, that sucked. Anyway, as you can see here, when I'm not recording, it pegs it to like 100 FPS or so. When I am recording, it kind of drops about 10 to 15 FPS. So, you know, just add like 10 FPS to this, and that's the performance you get with two Titan Xps or two 1080 Ti's. Again, you know, this is with all settings maxed out, including TAA and HDR. So this is the full experience that you can get with this monitor. So, you know, it looks gorgeous. It's just 27 inches is too small. I've gotten used to the 30 inches on the Dell 4K OLED, plus its sleek looks. Now, G-Sync is, of course, very nice. So, I think, I mean, you know, it's a good monitor, don't get me wrong. It's just that, you know, if you're like me and you have the OLED panel, you know, the image looks better on that. The GPU usage is way better using that monitor. You know, and if I'm gonna get only 80 to 100 FPS on this, it's like, what's the point? I thought I can get, you know, 144 FPS easily with my GPU setup, and here we are with, you know, several different games, and none of them really hit 144 FPS. It's just it's a little disappointing, to say the least. You know, it's always like, this was supposed to be the monitor that had everything, like, you know, they call it like the god of monitors or whatever, and it's not, you know, because as I've shown you here, it just doesn't work that way. So, you know, with two of the best desktop GPUs in SLI, although they're still Pascal architecture, you know, there's no way this is being CPU limited. As you can see, the CPU usage is not even 30%. So, I don't know what to say. I mean, you know, maybe later this year when the Volta desktop GPUs come out. You're running away from me, punk. It does look just incredible though. If you've not experienced OLED, this monitor would look, you know, night and day. Night and day looks compared to like a regular LCD monitor. So you know, you guys gotta, you know, I have kind of a biased perspective, mainly because I've had OLED for so long. So that kind of ruins the wow factor for me a little bit. I just wish that if the SLI scaling worked properly, and I could get 144 Hz or 144 FPS with this monitor, I think it would be so much better, because then you'll have this, you know, buttery smooth gameplay. And even at 85 to 90 or 85 to 100 FPS, it looks amazingly smooth and it feels great. The gameplay is amazing. I mean, this monitor is made for gorgeous FPS gameplay for sure. You know, again, to me the OLED image looks much better, but I think they would have, you know, DP 1.4, by the way, is like the outer edges of what, you know, it's capable of in terms of achieving 4K 144 Hz. That's part of the reason why I think they, you know, made this monitor 120 Hz, and you have to like overclock it to get the full 144. Nonetheless, you know, the amount of data that's transferred at, you know, 4K 144 Hz using DP 1.4, it's like maxed out. So I think it uses some sort of compression, to be honest, to achieve that. That's why the full color gamut is not used, or 10-bit color is not used at this refresh rate. Oh shit, I didn't see him. Now let's talk about some of the issues that I've run into with this monitor. For instance, some of the things are that if you have SDR enabled in the desktop and then you play a HDR enabled game, oh my god. It'll switch to HDR during the game, which is great, and then when you exit the game it'll go back to SDR. Now what I've noticed is in a game like Star Wars Battlefront 2, if you do that, the monitor actually turns silver for me. Like it looks like it, you know, blue screened, except it's silver screens, and like 3/4 of the monitor is, you know, like a dark silver, and then a little strip at the top is a lighter silver. And I usually have to restart the computer or you know, sign out and sign back in to reset that. It's really annoying. So that's why for certain HDR enabled games I've just run HDR on the desktop. Now again, having said that, holy crap, there's no particular reason to run HDR in the desktop, because as I said, the monitor can easily switch when you play a HDR game, and so you don't need to be running it all the time using Windows. And Windows HDR, again, I'm not a technical expert in that field, so I believe the Windows HDR implementation has its own set of issues, so I personally wouldn't want to run HDR like 24/7 with this monitor on desktop. Now if you have, you know, there are HDR enabled movies and then obviously games, so if you're watching like a HDR enabled movie, you might want to enable it, but I wouldn't want to enable that like 24/7. It's just not a good experience so far. The other thing is running 144 Hz. As I said, that's an overclock refresh rate. So I prefer to run 120 Hz at the desktop and then, you know, turn it up to 144 in the game. But then again, what's the point? Like, none of the games that I've played actually hit 144 FPS unless you're playing some old game like Battlefield 4 or something like that, maybe Battlefield 3. So that's it, guys. I mean, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm curious to hear your opinions. I'll be doing a lot of streaming with this monitor, so you know, you can feel free to ask me questions during that. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Yeah.